So everybody wants to save money with their business, but did you know that the second to third largest line item inside of a company is their employee benefits package? And most business owners completely stay away from it. They don't know how to improve it or enhance it. And you know what that costs them? It can cost them millions of dollars with their business. It can cost them a poor company culture and employee productivity. On this episode, we're going to be bringing in an expert that's going to talk everything related to the sexiest subject in business, HR. Let's get it going.
I want to let's get go rolling here. Obviously, we're talking about something that typically gets overlooked very much. You've been, in the employee benefits industry for over 20 years now. We hopped on a call a few weeks back. I mean, I think it was over a month ago already. But you said there's like one thing that I really want to touch on first, which is you had a good sized book of business
Yeah.
that you got rid of. It's just I sold it. Thinking you wanted to do maybe something different, which is very relevant to a lot of people. So you do something a long time. It's like, maybe I want to try something new. But then you said, it's almost like the Godfather, like they just pulled me back in, right? It's like, so I'm curious to know what made you maybe think you wanted to shift, and then ultimately what pulled you back into something that you actually genuinely love doing.
Thank you for asking the question. I think what happened in my particular case, I'd been in the business a while. My last job, I created this fantastic block of business, but was also the account manager and kind of managing all the pieces to it as well. And so I was working, 100-hour weeks and for years at a time. And I loved it. I was passionate about it. I was all in. But it burned me out a little bit. I got to a certain age. My kids were all young teenagers at the time. I have 4 boys. And I was like, I don't know that I can keep going at this pace and serve my clients in the way that I want to. At that time, our family firm got bought out. The family firm I was working for got bought out. And at that time, I decided, you know what, I think I might lean back into my fitness roots, or I might lean back into, opening a business, that type of thing. But what happened is, as soon as I left, my old clients started calling. And so, I have a huge responsibility to them, and kind of got pulled back in. Gratefully, got pulled back in. It's what I know and love.
So you got pulled back in, your clients are calling you. Obviously, it speaks to who you are as a person and a professional, right? I think that's something that we all desire. It's like that doctor who leaves a practice,
Right.
and it's like, I don't want to poach my patients, but it'd be cool if they start reaching out to me, and definitely speaks volumes about who you are. What, and you made an interesting comment about this. It's like, all right, now I'm starting over. It's a little bit maybe harder than I thought. I'm curious to know maybe what's the mental or mindset shift that you need to make in your situation where you have a book of business versus, all right, I'm starting from scratch,
Yeah.
but I have experience in the same industry as well.
There's a bit of an ego that's involved, a bit of an ego, right? There's an ego involved that I had to get over, right? I kind of had to lose that position I had built myself up to and really come in as a student of the game all over again, because businesses and employee benefits is entirely different in 2026 than it was in 2016. So I had a lot to learn. And in managing my book, I lost sight of the daily uh, intricacies of what benefits folks were facing. I was just kind of reacting more than I was strategizing with them. And so I really had to lean into that strategy piece, which I adore. It's really what makes me stand out amongst my peers. But I think moving forward, I just had to slow down, lower my expectations, right? Because I wanted to sell all the things. I wanted to be a consultant to all the people. And I had to slow down and really take it step by step and be intentional and be clear and really move forward with purpose.
That's such an interesting kind of perspective, especially around like ego, because
Yeah.
that can have all kinds of different meanings. So when you were first starting to talk about it, I was starting to take it more on. I haven't like I did a really good 7 8 figure book of business. Yeah, I got this. Like
That's exactly
doing
what
it
it was.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah, like no big
Who wouldn't
deal.
wanna work
And
with me? Come on.
yeah, like, are you kidding me? Like, as soon as I let it out, I'm gonna be flooded with all these people. And so a couple things happen is that you have some business owners where like, whether they're in consulting or you see this a lot, like with roofing companies, they do this, they build a business, sell the business, and they start all over again in another market. And they crush it because they just have that intellectual expertise, everything is already in there.
Yeah.
But on the other side, there's a little bit of that humble pie where it's like, oh, this is going to be, dude, walk in the park.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't happen. So tell us a little bit about, because I'm seeing you kind of smile about it. So tell us a little bit how that came about, and then maybe some of the mental toughness side of things that maybe we had to, tack on to
Yeah.
really power
I
through and be
think
successful the
mental
second time
toughness
around.
and grit is something that I lean into and talk about all the time. In this business, anytime you're building anything, there is a chip on your shoulder or grit or passion or something that is the driver. And for me, it was grit and getting back to the place that I felt comfortable, where I wasn't as hungry, right? Although the hungry drives me and is good, it took a little bit of setting my ego aside and really being a student of the game.
I like that. So another thing that I saw that you're very passionate about was also having that grit and kind of empowering female leaders on like, hey, these are some things that you can apply or integrate into yourself, and that's just going to give you the leading edge. Can you talk a little bit about that, about your passion of developing female leaders and why it's become so important to
Yeah,
you?
thank you for asking because this is something that lights me up every time. What I found was I was missing female mentorship and female leadership in my growth and development within the insurance and benefits industry. Most of my peers were male, most of my clients were male. And so I was really missing that female piece. And there were a couple situations that happened. I had an exit interview from that big firm that I made a ton of money for. And he said, Nicole, you're really masculine, right? And so I
You're
just
such a dude.
yeah. And
You're
I
like
was like,
one of us.
You mean assertive? You mean clear? You mean direct? What do you mean by masculine?" I'm a 6 foot tall basketball playing woman, so there's certainly some masculine parts to me for sure. But it was such an odd statement at such an odd time. And what that taught me was I wanted to reach back to younger producers, female producers who are maybe having that same experience, and really empower the female leaders in my industry, my peers, but also my HR leaders and my female CFOs. Not to leave the guys out, but I just feel that feminine um, urge to really connect the dots for women because I didn't have that done for me, and so I created an environment where
Mm,
it's a positive, connected community of
yeah.
women and we focus on just lifting each other up and helping each other where we can.
What would you say are the primary things that are gained from a woman that, let's just say, they've been mentored and coached in this field primarily by men, and then they start working with someone like you or another kind of female coach or leader mentor? What are the things that they gain with that? We're like, oh, like this is what I was missing. Like, what have you heard?
So I think that there's a different power and presence that comes from being a woman in a boardroom, making decisions, right? A real quick story. I used to have a leader. Every time I would walk into his office, he would raise his chair up, right, and at the desk just to sit higher than people and look down, right? So there's just some of those microaggressions on the male female side that can happen that I think when you talk about it with other women, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I experienced that too." So what happens is there's a connectedness, there's an understanding, there's a womanhood piece that kind of comes together where you don't feel like the odd duck. You feel part of something. You feel like somebody gets you a little bit more. I would say starting off in the industry, I worked for car dealers, right? I was part of the Virginia Car Dealer Association and was young 20s calling on car dealers and working with an all male industry. It creates that grit, right? It creates that resilience where I'm not afraid of anything. I'm not afraid of any boardroom because of those starts. So I think both things are important and aided in my journey, both the male dominated space and really bringing together the female leaders in my community.
What's maybe one mindset or mentality that is kind of based around women and in leadership that just really
Yeah.
maybe pisses you off and you're really determined to kind of flip it around on people who have that crappy viewpoint?
So I might twist this a different way. What I'd
Sure.
like to say is I think vulnerability in female leadership is a good thing. I think empathy, vulnerability, communication is so important and so overlooked. But when I talk about our unique gifts as women, those are some of our intuitions a little bit different and a little more spidey sensey, right? So I think that vulnerable leadership piece is something that I really lean into because I grew up in a time where you didn't talk about kids at work. You didn't talk about being married at work. You didn't talk about responsibilities you had outside of the four walls at work. And I think just holistically working with the whole person and not just who shows up at work is an important part of leadership. Knowing who they are and what their drivers are is important. And so I think that vulnerability piece is something I talk a lot on with female leaders.
Love it. Now, when we're diving into employee benefits, which, yeah, we were joking about before, like super sexy topic, but
So
So
hot.
I know,
I'm
good.
ready.
So
it's
good.
trending. It's trending on TikTok.
It's hot in here,
Well,
dude.
Mark
But
Cuban's making it a little more sexy, I guess.
yeah, that is true. But you mentioned a good point, which is it's vastly overlooked, but it's usually the second or third largest expense that an organization will have. And the fact that they don't typically ever, people who CFOs or just business owners, they're not really looking at it. What's maybe, I don't know, just what's something that you'd want to see, like, why is it often ignored? How about that? Let's
Yeah, I
start with
think
like,
I
why
think
is such a
because
big
we
expense?
created a system, the whole ecosystem did, right? We're all pointing fingers at the payers and the doctors and the patients and the brokers and the consultants. But I think what happens is we all collectively had created this environment where we integrated so much complexity. And so back 10, 20 years ago, the more complex, the more reason I had to be sitting in front of a CFO. So that complexity really created a space where ambiguity lived, between the lines things happened, the goal wasn't clear. And so I think our industry on the whole created this really purposely confusing dynamic. And so if people don't understand it, they don't want to address it, right? That's not what they want to talk about. That's not where they want to lean in. Especially when you're talking about leaders, CFO leaders and executive leaders, they don't want to admit that they don't know some of the intricacies of this complicated system. And so really breaking things down for leaders, being very clear and being very intentional, I think is missing in our industry. And so I kind of love the noise going on right now. You said it was trending on TikTok. Kind of love it, right? Because where there's noise, there's room for clarity, there's room for movement, there's room for change. And so I'm kind of excited about the mess that it is right now because it allows me to have more meaningful conversations.
So somebody might be, listening to this and saying, "All right, big whoop you do. Like, But from a purely financial standpoint, we're gonna obviously wrap other things into this. But how much, do organizations actually either lose when they're not looking at the benefits? How much could they save if they got somebody like yourself who pointed them in the right direction?
Yeah, really between 4 and 8% every year, at a minimum, right? There was a client I was working with earlier this week. They had 5,000 employees, and we were looking at $4 million first year savings, right? So we're not talking about small change. A teammate of mine and I were working on a emerging AI company with only 100 lives, and we could still save them, $200,000 in their first year. And it's not saving things because we're just jacking up prices for the employees. It's talking about removing fraud and waste, right? Really being intentional with claims and what those look like and who the drivers are, looking at the right math, not trusting the carrier's math and challenging it appropriately. So I could go on and on. But that's part of the deal, right? Is really getting to the grit of what do we have, where do we want to go, how do we get there, and being very intentional about the process.
I got a question on that too. So when you're looking, so whether a company has 5,000 employees or they have 100 or they have
Yeah.
five, like they all kind of start from like ground zero. And one of the things that we talk with entrepreneurs about is like there's a certain point where as a business owner, you got to have a level of competence around finance, around your books, bookkeeping, operations, sales, marketing, so on. It's illegal. At what juncture do you feel like, hey, a business owner really needs to not, they really need to understand the world of HR, especially as their business is scaling. So, because you can't do it all at once. We cannot do
Right,
that. So
right.
it's like, all right, at what stage are you like, okay, you need to take some time, or you need to get a consultant, or you need to read some books right here in your business. Definitely start diving in and learning about it.
I I think it's as soon as you start offering benefits, right? Which could be 5 lives, it could be 25 lives. So not to avoid your question, but I think that that's why the consultant work is so important because the needs of a 25 life group where it's just the owner and his sister, right? Or whatever,
Mhm.
handling all the leadership objectives, they're going to need more guidance and more clarity than a team that has 5,000 employees and has their own total rewards team built into their business, and everything in between is going to need something a little bit different. So I would say is as soon as they start to think about their growth, I like to, when I meet with business owners and entrepreneurs, what does your 3 to 5 year plan look like? What are your growth expectations? What are your budgets? What are we trying to accomplish? Are we having a hard time with retaining and getting employees? Do we have some weird third shift that we're trying to mask with some benefits that make people happy about coming to work? So I think that there's different needs amongst those clients, but that's where the really consultative work comes in to figure out what their plan is and how can we make this better and create less friction for employees.
Yeah, yeah. So, quick follow-up question to that is, how does one identify the right person to work with? Because as we know, like when we look at accounting or bookkeepers, they're not all created equal.
They're not.
Marketing agencies, I talk to more business owners where they've been burned by marketing agencies or these other kind of like fractional CMOs, and so the list goes on. Not saying that that's kind of what you what it is over there, but how can one maybe prepare themselves so that when they do start seeking counsel outside for their team to start integrating a benefits package, what are some things that like you recommend that they do so that they can align themselves with the right person?
Yeah, there's so many different personalities out there and different frameworks of work, right? A consultant, by definition, is paid by the business and are a little bit more for the business. A broker gets paid by the carrier, so there's some misalignment oftentimes in that pay structure. So I think it's really important to work with someone either by referral, right? You've got another business owner that works with somebody, and they can tell you, "Hey, yes, work with this person or stay away," is always great. I think a lot of us are building brands on LinkedIn. And through our videos and podcasts and those types of things, you're learning about how we think and how we move. And you can align yourself and say, yes, yes, that works for me, or
Mhm.
absolutely not. And I think finding the right fit, finding someone who understands your business, understands your vision, and can bring all of the pieces together is essential for success.
It's really interesting. I just want to go back 1 second. I love that explanation there, but you're talking about the companies. The question before Antonio asked you, pardon me, about starting out small and then growing. And I'm thinking about, just again, people, if you're listening to like this happens, because I'm thinking about a practice I was with, and we had about 6 employees when I started. So we never thought about
Yeah.
this. And then in a few years, it grew to 150 employees. So I'm doing the math because I remember you telling me we're saving about, 2,000 to maybe 2,500 per employee. And I'm just thinking, damn, we could have really done some stuff with an extra $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
So it really can escalate quickly if you do, to your point, have a vision and you know how to execute on it. Before you know, you're really kind of pissing away multiple six figures that could definitely be utilized the right way. But you mentioned also that there's a major disconnect when you're talking to these companies in the sense of you're speaking potentially to HR as well as the CFO,
Yeah.
right? So the HR is in charge of the benefits, but then obviously the CFO is saying, all right, financially, does this make sense? What do you typically see as like maybe the biggest disconnect between those two groups of people when you're trying to get them to change their benefits or implement altogether?
Yeah, I love this question because what happens is oftentimes the HR leaders, the total rewards leaders and CFO, they sit in two different silos and they come together once a year and they say, "Hey, here are our options for benefits." And then here we go. What I see really intelligent business leaders do is actually all take a seat at the table, at the strategic table. What does our planning look like? We're deciding together. What does our benefits program look like? We're deciding together. What does the data look like? What is the story we're trying to tell for our culture? and having all the players at the table is vital, because then you're not reactive. You're planning together and not just reacting to what one side of the house does versus the other.
Well, so when you're it's two different people that are in that group,
It
like
is.
the HR person, very different personalities. And you mentioned, and Antonio, you talk about this a lot with employees in terms of putting people in the right positions based on their personality. And Nicole, you were kind of talking about that male energy almost, and just being in a male dominated. So HR tends to be a little bit, ideally, a little more empathetic. It's definitely a little more female. And then the CFOs tend to be more male. So the brain's thinking differently. What actually gets the CFO, though, to move forward versus that HR individual who's just maybe looking out for the employees as best they
Yeah, I
can?
think right. If we break it down simply, CFO's worried about a budget. HR is worried about people, right? Both of them are equally as important. If you don't have the people, you don't have a business. If you don't have a budget, you can't afford the people, right? So it's really that disconnect there. But bringing them together and having a really strategic conversation, because look, we want to talk about how we can save the business money, how we can implement plans and structure that drives the business initiatives and enhances the culture, whatever that you're wanting that to look like. But also, we want to not put a ton more hats in HR's ring, right? They are the superstars that are holding all the things together. I cannot add more to their daily tasks. I cannot add more to the friction of care that employees receive. So, as a
Right.
consultant, I have to be able to speak CFO and HR, and I have to do it at the same time, oftentimes. And so
What,
it's handling all ends of the spectrum.
then Nicole, what are some of the biggest reasons why some of those, let's just say, deals fall through the cracks? Or like it doesn't come together, because there sounds like there could be a really big inaction component to this,
There is.
where you're learning a lot, they're learning, and it's so weird because you can have an individual where like they're very mathematically inclined. You could talk numbers all day with them, and they're right there with you. And then someone else, as soon as you get into that space, they're like, "I'm checked out. I'm out of here. I don't want to talk about
Yeah.
this. I tap out. I tap." And kind of what you mentioned, when it's like everybody together, then it's almost like it feels like we're not aligning here. How many? I guess like how many deals are lost, or benefits get hurt, or companies get hurt simply due to inaction because of the resisting of a change?
Yeah, so many. And this one makes me want to cry. So I hate losing. So what happens is oftentimes people reach out and start having conversations too close to their renewal. They're already in reactive mode. I'm putting questions and ideas on their plate when they're already overwhelmed with all the activities that they have to do around open enrollment and benefit season and those types of things. And so it gets put to the back burner until next year. Well, unfortunately, next year comes around, and it's that same reactive environment. So it really takes
Mhm.
the pain of either employees being unhappy, retention slipping and not being at benchmark, budget strains. It really takes the pain to be great enough from the employer perspective to slow down, plan it out, and start having those conversations with other brokers. Even if you're happy with your current broker, just getting thought leadership ideas from either peers or other consultants is vital to just stay relevant and on top of things when it comes to
Mhm.
benefits. I find that status quo and reactive behavior is the main driver of inaction.
It kind of reminds, right now we're kind of in the thick of things with tax season.
Yeah.
And I think it's very similar, where like you have some really, really good businesses where they schedule out uh their tax strategy, like when they're meeting about their bookkeeping, their numbers, everything. And so when it's time to file, everything is good and everything is simple. But that's not everybody now, is it? Sometimes, right, they're like, oh my god, we
Yeah.
got 2 more weeks left, and they're
Same
scrambling,
thing.
and their
Yeah.
books are
Very
they're getting
similar.
cooked. You're right.
Yeah.
So you suggest, like, for business owners out there, specifically around this, it's like treat it the same way, like schedule things out, give yourself enough time for due diligence, for talks, for brainstorming, for education. Is that kind of what you're saying?
It
Is like
is
treat
what
this
I
like that too?
recommend. Yeah, I'll be very clear. What I recommend, and employers hate this, but right after their open enrollment, when everything's fresh, your frustrations are fresh, your pain points are fresh, the employees' feedback is fresh, It's at that point you want to start to have strategy conversations. And either with your consultant or with a peer or with your internal strategic team, but something needs to come together at that point because it's that perfect mix of it's done, right? From a checklist standpoint, but also all the information's so fresh that you can really make a strategy moving forward that really excels for next year instead of finding yourself in the same reactive position again next year.
I would imagine for you doing it as long as you have, that there has been some significant, there's some like stories of these aha moments where the entire boardroom is like, oh my God, like everything ties in together. And you're like, so I'm trying to tell
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that you can share of just maybe, not necessarily it's a funny story, but we've heard some wild things that like once there's this powerful aha moment where everybody gets it and like, ah, that's why Nicole is here.
Yeah, there's been so many, because that's the point I get hired, right? That aha moment when they're like, "That's what we need to do." That's when I get hired. I wish it happened more often. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so in that moment, I was in a manufacturing plant and they had been very reactive. They had grown from 2 employees to 350 employees within 6 months. So just crazy growth. They were more
Wow.
focused on that growth than anything else, as you can imagine. And so by the time enrollment came around, they were reactive. Things got missed. People were not enrolled. It was a mess. And so at that point, they're like, "Okay, I think we need to talk." Right. And I was not the incumbent broker at the time. And so I walked in and said, "Hey, have you considered?" Right. I started talking about their absence and leave policies and workers' comp and how does that tie into their policies. Right, I wasn't even talking benefits, and they're like, "Oh, whoa, you get who our employees are," right? We started talking about third shift and morning shift and retention and how that's hard and how you have to meet the needs of the executives and the hourly, variable workers. So, I think understanding the business and making a plan, together can be really powerful regardless of the story.
Hmm. That's a powerful one for sure. It's interesting too because when you're talking about, yeah, and I agree with you. It's like November 10th, and people are saying, "Hey, let's try to figure out our benefits at this point." You're like, "Come on, man! Like you should
Yeah.
have came to me like months ago."
I just got a
Um,
30% renewal, fix it. I'm like, "Well,
yeah, and I've been part of that. It's like
today."
we're scrambling
Yeah.
around, but then the other aspect too. It's not even just more stress for them, but then this is the part where you see leaders do this a lot. Like then they're putting a lot of strain on their own employees, right? It's like, "Hey, Nicole, you're HR. Like work extra time to make this happen." It's like I got other stuff going on. So I think there's this aspect too, even within the benefits world where, yeah, we're talking a lot about financials, which is obviously very important, but then how does picking the right benefits and doing it in a timely fashion actually relate to the culture of the organization,
Yeah.
right? So it's not just like, hey, we're picking a better benefits, but I'd be curious to know what you think about that because I know we touched on that
Yeah, that's
and it was,
Oh, go ahead.
right, like the clarity and the alignment. So maybe we could start there first of like how that actually relates to a better culture for your
Well,
company.
listen, if you as the leader feel reactive, then how are your employees going to feel, right? They're going to feel like their employees aren't important or their employee benefits aren't important. They're going to feel like their needs aren't important, right? So it's a direct correlation to culture. When you allow people to make informed, timely decisions, that's empowerment, right? When you rush your team and you rush employees and you force fit solutions and you throw band-aids on stuff and you'll deal with it later, um, the employees feel it. And so it's very important as leaders that we are living our culture, not just the written words on the wall, but we're living it in a way that employees feel our culture and not just reactive, figure it out. Uh, because employees are going to think, here they are spending, you know, most of their money on people, and then they're losing them because they're just not caring enough to give them the proper time and education.
I'd like to kind of piggyback on that and just expand on that a little bit further. Can you talk to us about so we look at kind of employee benefits packages as an opportunity to even get even more productive,
Yeah.
just because the employees are feeling seen, recognized, heard. They're having things that make their lives just easier. They're able to recover better depending on just what the package is all about. What have you seen on your end where maybe the business owner was a little like, I don't know if I want to do this, or let's give them the minimum, and then you created something a little bit more robust that is specific for that business and for that team, and then productivity just went better or
Yeah.
like their business exploded. Okay, talk a little bit about maybe things that you experienced maybe on that front.
Sure. So I work with nonprofits quite a bit here in DC, and oftentimes they don't have the hourly rate to pay their really fantastic workers. So we have to build robust benefit plans to attract and keep people. And what I'm finding, especially in the last 2 years, the benefits that are really driving productivity are women's health initiatives, right? So that could be maternity leave, that could be family bonding, that could be menopause and perimenopause fixes, right? And also financial planning. So having financial tools and financial coaches where employees who are worried about whatever, right? They're going to get married, they're trying to do a trust, they are aging and they want to make sure their kids are taken care of. They are trying to plan a family, but they need to do it with intervention. It allows them to really build for what they want and personalize the benefits so that they feel empowered to show up at their job and not be worried about, man, I have to take off time. Man, I have this tax bill coming up that I don't know about, and I'm so worried about that. I'm not being as productive. And so we're really seeing those two benefits among many uh, really shine through and really differentiate businesses.
No, that's actually very important, it's sounds so basic, right? It's just not giving them, but like asking for feedback of what would you guys
Yeah.
actually utilize. Because, we do hear that frustration from owners, which is, hey, I'm giving them X, Y, and Z, and they're so ungrateful and they're not even using it. But then you actually talk to the employees, like, we don't even want to do that.
Yeah.
What we'd really like is what you just mentioned, like, I'd love to get some financial help or, maybe have more time with my family. It's like, oh, okay, we could do that and we can, restructure it. And you're showing, like you said, you're showing them that you actually care about their own feedback. And it's just such an easy way to get people to be more bought in that it goes completely overlooked.
Yeah, if employees feel seen and heard, they're going to show up differently in the workplace than they feel if they don't matter, right? And so, benefits is a fantastic business lever to achieve that. And I think a lot of leaders miss that.
What's I'm curious to know what your opinion is on this. Is that there's a lot of companies that have benefits, but the employees don't really utilize it. And
I was one of those.
yeah, it's like, but
Yeah.
yeah, they're coming in sick. So is there anything that you can help maybe a business owner, even in the sense of just how to have a conversation? Because then it's,
Absolutely.
especially in healthcare, right? Like, I don't, healthcare is a big one where it's just, we're taught to, let's just come in sick, even though I don't know why you'd want to do that, but we all do. You come in sick, you think you're being a hero coming in with the flu.
Yeah.
But then it's, what are you costing yourself and what are you costing the company? So I'm just curious to know, how do you maybe have those
Yeah,
conversations with them as well?
there's a couple different dynamics going on. One is we've got 4 or 5 generations in the workplace now, right? I'm Gen Z, so I'm gonna rub some dirt in it, get it done anyway. I don't care if your feelings are hurt, you got to show up, right? But my younger colleagues maybe need a little more nurturing and a little more education and guidance, right? And they aren't the we'll figure it out generation. And I'm not picking on generations, but that's just an idea there. And I think,
It's okay. You could no
Wait,
judgment.
you
Yeah.
said you're Gen Z
yeah,
You're Gen Z.
yeah.
or is that Gen X?
Oh, am I Gen X, not Gen Z? I've got too many.
I
I was like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
like a
You're looking a little
record
rough.
scratch
Yeah, yeah,
moment.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And
You're
so,
like, you're
uh,
18 years old. I was like,
no,
dang.
I messed up the letters. So you can't.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. And so I think
Those
too,
labels.
engagement studies are important. And again, the timing of those is important, right? If we had our open enrollment in October and then we do an employee engagement survey in May about benefits, the only people responding are the ones who have used their benefits from January to May, right? And so I think the data tells the story. And what I mean by data is utilization. What do the claims look like? Where are the people going for care? Where are the opportunities for education and improvement to the bottom line? So it's really starting with the data and what the story the data is telling us, communicating that in an actionable way to a CFO and an HR leader so that they can make a plan to address those issues, right? We got to figure out what we're working with before we fix it. Oftentimes in benefits, people throw a Band-Aid solution on, right? People were fussing about women's health. So we threw a Band-Aid solution on there. Well, we're 95% male right? Where that did nothing for the overall, health of the company,
Workforce.
right?
Yeah.
So we've really got to
Yeah.
start at the data and work backwards to solutions.
I kind of want to pivot over into you. Like I really love the energy. This is like the first time, you and I met. And there's something you said a little bit earlier, 6 foot tall basketball player.
Yeah.
You just like, I was like, oh, I just probably broke some ankles back in the day.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, because I saw here from research that you are one of 6 children. Is that
I
correct?
am. I'm the oldest girl. I have an older brother,
Oh,
but oldest girl is 6.
oh, I love that. So I come from a really big family. But my mom's like 1 out of 13. Like my dad's like 1 out of 8.
Yeah,
And there's just a different.
it's different.
It's just it's different, right? And so where I'm going with this is like, how did that large family dynamic shape your approach? So I have 3 kids, and my eldest is a girl,
Okay.
and my wife is also the oldest girl. Well, she's the
Yeah.
oldest, and I'll tell you right now, they are built different. So I'm just asking you, how did that shape you with your leadership and your I guess like your leadership style and working hard for other people?
Yeah, I think when you are part of a big family, you innately have a role, right? Whatever that role is. Because I was the oldest girl, I was the caretaker. And so
You dunked on everybody
that's
else too.
it. That never was able to dunk. Womp womp. But it created this environment where I had to go and do. I couldn't sit back and wait for anybody to do anything for me. I had to figure it out and go. And so it also created this really passionate curiosity. I do all things with like this immense amount of passion. And I think that I get fueled um by serving people. That's my love language to myself is in service to others. And so when I can do a really good job and I can do meaningful work for people, I'm really empowered by that, and that's what drives me every day and gets me out of bed every day is just that passion for making
Hmm.
something better and leaving the day better than I found it, right? And I think coming from a family too, a big family, we love by insults. So there's nothing anybody can tell me that's
Yeah,
gonna
very
hurt
HR,
my
right?
feelings, right?
Yeah.
I'm also a mom of four boys. The youngest 3 are teenagers. The oldest is getting ready to have his first child. And so,
Congrats.
Nice.
a boy household, there's no room for crying and sensitivity. There is. But, for the
Y-
most part, it's created this really awesome dynamic for work because I am a little bit fearless and I am relentless and I am passionate. And I think the people that work with me like that about me. But it can be a lot for some others. So,
that's such a good one. So my um that's one thing that I read too was mom of 4 boys, and I almost had a stroke when I was talking to
okay,
Dan
nice.
about it, because I have 2
Yeah.
boys, and they're twins, and they're like 2.5, and
Oh,
they're absolute
you're
they're
right in the
absolute
MM,
savages.
like
Yeah, they're
MMA stuff. Yeah.
absolute
Yeah.
barbarians. So when he said that you had 4, I was like, bless her, man, because they're just so like the way they are when I see them towards their mother, like they're just headbutting, elbow drops,
Yes.
and you're like, whoa. So I wonder how that has impacted you with you being a consultant and you working and leading people in finding calm in the chaos, because I swear, like, my 2 boys do not provide any of that to us.
Yeah, and they say it's terrible twos, but it's really terrible like fours.
Yeah.
I think I think it gives me I was talking about vulnerability and leadership, and I think that that's what
Mhm.
my boys have given me is the permission to
uh,
show up fully as myself and unapologetically myself in business. And it's taken me a while to get here, but I think as they have grown older, I've grown more confident in that stance. And so I think there's that, right? And I want them to know what a powerful, hardworking female looks like. But I also want to bake cookies and play in the backyard, right? I want to play flag football in the side yard. So I think it just creates a really good balance and makes me a better leader and a better balancer of all the things.
I love that. How has that also helped you maybe with working with I want to throw out this example because it's very, very true, where I've worked with CEOs that do not have families and they do not have
Yeah.
kids, but they are leading people and looking at benefits package for people that do have families and do have kids. And talk to us, like, has that been an experience of yours where it's like, hey, I'm coaching them like, hey, this is probably what this person's going through, and we need to have maybe this for them because they got like 5 kids. Or is
Yeah.
there anything like that that's come up
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
interesting?
So what makes my job uh, phenomenal is that I can be very strategic and intentional. And I know I'm saying that a lot. And the reason why is you have to address every group individually. You have to address every person within the group individually. Now, how you do that on a grand scale? By communicating effectively and listening to the actual needs, right? What they say they might not be the fix, right? We need to dig deep. Again, look at the data, tell us what the data is, because the data is firm, right? The data doesn't lie. And looking at that and moving that forward for decisions is vital. And I would say as a female, I have a chameleon-like ability to talk differently to a CFO than I would a grieving HR person who just had to spend the weekend caring for her sick mom, right? Like there's different ways we show up and work, and my empathy and vulnerability allow me to go to both ends of the spectrum. But there's oftentimes I don't lead with, I'm a mom of 4 kids and come from a family of 6, right? That's leading with vulnerability, but that doesn't always have a place in the boardroom. Sometimes I work with a lot of leaders that are like, tell me the clear story, tell me your thoughts on how to fix it. Let's just go. And so a lot of times the clients I tend to work with are like, cut the
Hmm.
shit, let's go. And so I'm firm in that too.
You've had a interesting health journey that you talk about
Yeah.
as well, that I like to touch on. But I also I'm curious. I'll let you kind of walk us through it. But then also, how has that actually helped you become not just better at your job, but overall maybe like how's it helped you actually become a better leader?
Yeah. I think it ties into walking the walk, right? You have to be who you want people to think you are. You have to be that person. And so what happened is, you know, I I lost track of myself. I was caring for kids and building this business, and there was very little time for me to worry about me. I thought, right? And so through that, I gained a ton of weight, right? I from former athlete, I was working out all the time, and then I cut all that out because priorities changed in my life, and I gained a ton of weight. And so I was actually in a health and wellness meeting for a manufacturer down in Tennessee. And it was third shift manufacturing. And I'm talking to these guys and they don't want to be there. And I'm talking about driving the bus of your own healthcare. And you hear that, right? I'm 300 pounds, right? And so I look like a linebacker. And so, it was just, I didn't feel bad, but what it did create is a moment of clarity where I was like, oh, I can't be this health and wellness consultant and be 300 pounds and have people buy into my story. I have to be the example. And so I took control of my health, and it was in that moment I was like, okay, this is the pain got big enough where I had to make a change, and I
Mhm.
implemented that change, and it took me about 5 years to get the weight off, but it allowed me to show up again in vulnerability, understanding that there are moments in our lives when we aren't our ideal selves and we're not running at max capacity full speed, and it's created a leadership by let me get in the trenches with you, not just expect things of you.
Well, first off, just kudos on that. I mean,
Yeah, good stuff.
such a win. Yeah, no, really, really great to hear. I want to circle to one thing you mentioned a second ago, which was there are some business owners that just you said, I think it was like, cut the shit. What's the
Yeah.
bottom line? Like, what's this? Like, right? Um, Once someone says that, what is the most common thing that you just respond right back with them? Like what do you think most employers are getting fundamentally wrong about their current benefit strategy? You're just like, well, it's this.
Yeah, I think they jump right to a fix, like fix it. And I have to peel back the layers and say, what are we fixing first? Right? Like, let's not just add another thing, right? Add another product, add another service, add another lever. Like, what are we fixing? Right? Like, what are we doing here? What's our plan? What's your business strategy? What's your growth plan for the next few years? So it's a lot of questions back to the CFO that he or she oftentimes wasn't expecting. And so, but it creates a level playing field where I know exactly what I'm trying to fix for them. There's so many levers in healthcare. And if I don't identify the specific ones that align with the business, then I'm going to miss. I'm not going to earn their business.
Is there an aspect to that where they just, I don't know, I don't really have a 3-year plan. I'm just trying to get through today.
Yeah.
Right. But like, I'm just curious to know, like, A, how do you guide them? And then B, I'm just curious, like, all right, maybe you benefit from working with a consultant or a coach to help you understand what your mission, vision, and plan is.
Yeah. Well, I think we can help with that. I think that that's part of my strategic job is to help them align their vision with the right questions to ask. Because I think the big miss is CFOs and HR leaders aren't asking the right questions because they've not been taught to. They've been taught to accept what comes across their desk. And so
Mhm.
putting them in a seat of empowerment, what would you change about your healthcare, right? Are we just talking budget? Because I can do budget cost effective strategies, but is that what we're talking about? And they'll step back and go, no, I'm losing good people, right? Or no, my HR person's frustrated because none of the software works, right? Whatever it is, but I've got to ask the right questions to get to the actual pain point, and then we start talking about strategy and fixes. If I lead with fixes, I'm not doing them any kind of justice.
Right, right. I think that's really wise to do. As far as money wasted with HR leaders, where do you think that the biggest buckets are, in your opinion?
I think HR leaders don't take the time to understand their data, and I don't think that they're explained their data in a right way. So oftentimes what I've seen happen in our industry is that brokers will hand over a spreadsheet and go, "Okay, pick." Right? Pick whatever plans you want. Like, here are your options, go. Well, then what am I here for? As a consultant, right? I have to lead. I have to say, hey, your data's saying this. So your employees are likely feeling this. The education gaps are here. The things we're missing, like there's some misalignment with the way care is given here. Our
Mhm.
claims are saying that everyone's going to the ER instead of engaging with their primary care. We have a due diligence to show people a better way for their own pockets and for the businesses. So I think again, understanding the business and understanding what's driving their vision and their cost is imperative to be
Mhm.
a good consultant.
I'd like to see if we can pull out a little bit of a crystal ball here
Okay.
and see, like, all right, what does Nicole Quinn Miles think is going to happen in the future? So,
Oh
just maybe
gosh.
describe like what trends do you see? What's going to happen in the United States? Maybe industries, or maybe like what's the benefit package of the future might look like for successful
Yeah,
companies
I
where
don't
like
know.
really
You know,
attract
DC
people.
is talking a little bit about benefits, and that has me a little scared, right? Because anytime the government gets involved in our wallets, I don't know. I don't feel great about it. Um,
What? They don't do
they don't do
anything wrong,
anything
Nicole.
wrong. I know.
Yeah, they are
Publicly
perfect.
speaking about it. I think there's so much room, especially with AI, to get really personal and really helpful to the end user by removing friction, by removing barriers to care, and really helping employees get the care they need when they need it and the right care with the right quality outcomes. And I think the inclusion of a lot of this really unique AI software and guidance and employee choice tools and clear pictures of data for the employers. It's going to paint this really clear picture for the whole ecosystem. And I think that'll drive some behavioral changes. And I think it'll drive the way people do business a little bit more transparent, hopefully a lot more transparent, where that people can see what's behind the curtain and act accordingly.
Love it. Costs, but costs are going up about 10%.
Yep.
We're looking at just insurance costs, and then you factor in, obviously, big talk in the government is how to reduce medication costs and whatnot. So overall, we know they're rising. So if I'm an executive, I'm listening to you. I know open enrollment is in November. What's something I could do, right away that I can act on? Because you also mentioned that one of the biggest issues is inaction. I
Yeah.
say, Nicole, I'm ready. I want to take action. What's something I could do right away tomorrow that also wouldn't negatively impact anything on the benefit side?
I think call me. I think uh,
Yeah.
just pick up the phone and call me.
Hey,
No,
I just met you.
love it.
This is crazy.
So I think I'll sing to you later. I think really understanding, again, I know I'm being repetitive here, but really understanding their benefits and their data and where they want things to go off market, where they're not rushed. We can have strategic conversations. Oftentimes that's with other people, right? Whether it's with another CFO, whether it's with a CFO peer group, whether that's with another advisor that's just giving you a second set of eyes. I would say oftentimes when I am working with a prospective client, the thing that earns me the business is just being a consultant for free first, right? And saying, hey, here's where I think your hot opportunities are to save money, or here's where I think, you could be looking to optimize your benefits program. There's no friction for employees. Nobody even knows it's being done, but we're having these strategic conversations behind the wall. And what that does is enables leaders to make empowered, smart decisions because they can see what that whole picture looks like, and they can see it from two different points of view, right? They can go back to their incumbent broker and say, "Hey, what about what about this?" Um, and it enables the picture forward to be more clear.
No, that's whole, and it's okay. You did like a little shameless plug there, but no, it's true though. It's at the end of the day though. You made a good point, which is contact the expert,
Yeah.
right? So you have business owners who, like you said, a lot of inaction is due to I'm not aware, but let's call it what it is. Who the hell really understands anything about
Right.
insurance? Unless you're in it. But and then you have a business owner who's like, you know what, I'm gonna figure this out on my own. And then they either end up
Yeah.
kicking the can down the road, they make some terrible decision versus, let me just find an expert like
Yeah.
you. So I'm totally cool you saying that because that really actually makes the most sense, whether it's a coach, a consultant, somebody who's in the space that knows versus I got to do it all myself.
And it seems
Nicole,
like
honestly, this is,
a daunting project, right? Sorry to cut you off. It seemed like
yeah.
a
No,
daunting
you're good.
project, but oftentimes it's a couple minutes conversation. It's a 15-minute
Yeah.
meeting. We're not talking about taking on a huge project. Oftentimes it's just creating clarity for people.
100%. Speaking of a 15-minute call, how would somebody actually be able to get a call with you or connect with you if they were like, I got to get with her and save some money and
Yeah,
get this
all my
stuff figured
contact
out?
information is on my LinkedIn, Nicole Quinn Miles. Always happy to just talk benefits, right? Ping ideas together. I am passionate about this topic. I'm passionate to hear how others, what they're going through and what their problems are. I love to be a problem solver and a fixer. I also love to connect people with the right solutions and people in their lives. So yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. All my contact information is there.
This was fun. Thank you so much for joining us. We learned a lot, and I really love what you're doing and helping out these business owners on this front. I think they definitely need it.
Yes. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
Yes. Nah, this is great. Thanks, Nicole.
All right.